Pam Bondi didn't hesitate, she dodged. And in the split second she refused to answer a simple legal question. The entire hearing shifted from routine oversight to a moment that exposed exactly how power bends, twists, and hides when the truth becomes inconvenient. Because when an attorney general avoids clarity on the limits of a pardon, you have to ask yourself, is the answer unknown? Or is it something they desperately don't want to say out loud? The exchange wasn't supposed to be dramatic. It began with something entirely different, an issue that has nothing to do with pardons, politics, or partisan narratives.
In 2024, the U.S. Capitol Police identified and received nearly 9,500 concerning statements or threats against members. Federal prosecutors have only secured 8 convictions so far, and the heightened threat environment demands an all-hands-on-deck approach. Will you commit to assigning an assistant U.S. attorney or a special assistant U.S. attorney in each of the 94 federal districts to, at least on a part-time basis, investigate and prosecute threats against members of Congress?
So thank you for bringing that up, and I take that very seriously. Not only what happened in Minnesota was horrible. I've spoken to Keith Ellison. I've spoken to Amy Klobuchar about that. It's horrible. We are involved in that. The FBI was involved. Our U.S. attorneys are involved. Many of these are district to district. So the way we're doing that is, I will tell you, my National Security Division is involved in all of those and assisting in those. We meet every single morning and we discuss that. But many of those, Minnesota, will be handled in the state in which it happened. Another one is Governor, I'm sorry if I can keep going. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I don't mean
Quickly,
to
though.
I filibuster. Governor Shapiro and what happened in Pennsylvania with Governor Shapiro. I've spoken to Governor Shapiro. We are working hand in hand, our U.S. attorney with the district attorney there, hand in hand, just like in Minnesota. I made sure our U.S. attorney and our district attorneys there were working hand in hand. Political party doesn't matter when something like this happens. And I also want to make sure all members of Congress are safe as well.
Okay, and I would reiterate, Chairman Stile and I think Chairman Stile and I agree that at least a part-time in each of the 94 districts would be appropriate. Let me change topics for just a moment.
I'm really quick on that. Yes, we're doing that through our National Security Division, so I think that's already in the works, and I would be glad to meet with you in a secure facility to talk about that.
Very good, thank you. Continuing, in addition to my role here, the committee that I serve on as an authorizer oversees Capitol security as well as federal elections, so I'm closely following the aftermath of January 6th. Recently, several defendants who received presidential pardons related to that day are now arguing in court that the pardon covers crimes like, for instance, illegal firearm possession discovered in a search of an individual's home in California months after January 6th. What's your position on whether the pardons cover these separate offenses?
Yeah, the pardon power rests with the president, not the Department of Justice, and some of that is pending litigation, and I cannot discuss pending litigation.
Well, I'm not asking you about who has the right to a pardon. I think as the Department of Justice in February wrote, the pardon is an act of grace which removes the punishment from a crime a person has committed. It further said, in its effect, the granting of a pardon is in no sense the overturning of a judgment of conviction. It is an executive action that mitigates or sets aside punishment. So as the chief law enforcement officer, what's your opinion, not the president's power of whether he can offer a pardon? That's pretty clear in the Constitution. But for crimes committed unrelated to January 6th, would you suggest that the pardons would cover activities or crimes potentially committed outside of that by the same person?
Well, I don't know if you're referring to Joe Biden pardoning his son after he said he would not pardon Hunter Biden, or the
No, I actually
commutation
referred
of
to
all
January
the
6th. I'm sorry.
all the sentences that the people that were on death row. I've met with those families,
No,
and
I-
all of those sentences were commuted. I'm not going to comment on pardons on either side of the aisle.
So, well, I'm not asking about either side. I'm asking, you're the chief law enforcement officer in the United States. You have a responsibility directly, but you swore an oath to the Constitution, not the president. Want to know what your views are on the extent to which pardons cover potential crimes committed by individuals who have been pardoned but unrelated to January 6th.
Do you mean the ones that were done by the auto pen? I'm not going to discuss
right.
anything that
Mr.
could
Chairman,
be or not be
I
pending litigation.
respectfully, Ms. DeLauro accused you of filibustering. I think that's the height of filibustering. This is a serious, serious topic. And for you to suggest that you don't have an opinion or to divert to other things that have nothing to do with January 6 pardons, I think is frankly demeaning to your responsibilities and your job. With that, I'll yield back.
A congressman laid out a disturbing reality. Threats against members of Congress have skyrocketed. Nearly 9,500 concerning statements or direct threats in a single year, and yet only 8 federal convictions. 8. With numbers like that, the danger isn't hypothetical. It's a growing reality that could disrupt the very foundation of representative government. He wasn't pushing an agenda. He wasn't trying to trap anyone. He simply asked whether the Justice Department would commit to assigning at least one part-time federal prosecutor in each of the 94 judicial districts to prioritize investigating and prosecuting threats against elected officials. It was a structural fix, a practical step, something any attorney general should answer with clarity: yes, no, or here's what we'll do instead. But even here, Bondi gave the first hint of what was coming. She expressed sympathy. She referenced conversations with state officials. She described coordination between the DOJ, FBI, and local prosecutors. She talked about morning briefings and interagency collaboration. It all sounded thoughtful, involved, responsible. But the substance wasn't there. She didn't commit. She didn't agree. She didn't disagree. She talked around the question without ever stepping into the center of it. And even though her tone was warm and empathetic, there was an undercurrent of evasion, a reluctance to acknowledge that the system might need more than polite concern to fix a real threat. Still, it was subtle. A viewer might let it slide. But then the congressman pivoted. He shifted the conversation to something that couldn't afford vagueness: whether January 6 pardons could extend to completely unrelated crimes committed months later. For example, an individual pardoned for their involvement on January 6 later, being charged with illegal firearm possession discovered during a search in California long after the riot. Could that person claim immunity under the original pardon? It's a legal question, not a political one. A constitutional question, not a rhetorical one. The DOJ answers questions like this all the time. The public deserves clarity about the extent of executive power, because if pardons can stretch beyond their original purpose, the impact is enormous. The congressman read the DOJ's own past words back to her. A pardon lifts the punishment for a specific act. It does not overturn convictions. It does not erase all future accountability. It does not grant blank check immunity to. So he asked the most basic version of that idea. In her view, would a January 6 pardon cover an unrelated crime committed later? The room waited. It was the kind of question that should take an attorney general seconds to answer. Instead, Bondi ducked behind pending litigation, a shield that made no sense, because he wasn't asking her to comment on a specific defendant or outcome. He was asking for the DOJ's general interpretation, a routine part of the job. Sensing the dodge, the congressman clarified again. He stripped away any context she could hide behind. He removed any reference to individuals. He asked the core legal question alone. And yet again she refused. Then came the derailment. Suddenly Bondi dragged in completely unrelated examples. She referenced pardons from another administration. She mentioned individuals who had nothing to do with January 6. She brought up commutations for unrelated cases. She changed the entire topic sentence by sentence, hoping the shift would dilute the pressure of the original question. It didn't work. The congressman tried again, gently reminding her that she wasn't there to defend or protect any president, any party, or any political ally. She was there as the nation's top legal officer. Her oath, he pointed out, was to the Constitution, not to any individual's preferences or political convenience. Still, no answer. Instead, she threw in another deflection, questioning whether he meant the pardons done by autopen, a term that had nothing to do with the issue being discussed. It wasn't just avoiding the question. It was smothering it under irrelevance. And that's when the congressman snapped. Not emotionally, professionally. He called her behavior what it was: filibustering. An intentional attempt to run out the clock, divert attention, and avoid placing a clear legal stance on the record. But this wasn't just about the argument. It wasn't about political sides. It wasn't even about January 6. What happened in that moment revealed something deeper about institutional leadership. An attorney general doesn't have the luxury of evasion. The DOJ is the country's legal foundation. It cannot shift with political winds or avoid defining the boundaries of executive power. Transparency from the DOJ isn't optional. It's essential for the rule of law. When the person in charge of interpreting the nation's laws refuses to give a straightforward answer, it chips away at public trust. Because the truth is this: a pardon's scope matters. That if a pardon covers unrelated future crimes, then the office that grants it becomes a shield rather than an instrument of justice. It could protect misconduct indefinitely. It could create a category of individuals legally untouchable. And whether or not such a thing is happening, the fact that the Attorney General wouldn't say otherwise is the most revealing part of this entire exchange. Some online rumors have suggested that officials hesitate to clarify the limits of pardons because it may expose weaknesses in how they were issued. Others speculate that acknowledging limits could contradict messaging coming from political allies. None of this is confirmed, but what fuels speculation more than silence? When an official avoids the simplest version of a question, people naturally start wondering what's behind the curtain. The congressman didn't press her because he wanted drama. He pressed her because clarity is the DOJ's responsibility. Without it, the boundaries of law become elastic, stretching and shrinking based on convenience, pressure, or personal ties. And that is exactly the danger the founders tried to prevent when they designed the balance of power. Her refusal wasn't neutral. It wasn't cautious. It was a choice. A choice that says, I will not define this boundary on the record. And that choice matters. Because hearings aren't just meetings. They are the watchdog moments where the government is forced to speak openly on camera under oath. They are where evasions become visible, where silence becomes evidence, where the public sees who stands firm and who folds under pressure. What Bondi revealed, without ever admitting anything, was that the boundaries of power are being tested, possibly stretched, and certainly shielded from public view. And when clarity disappears from the justice system, accountability isn't far behind. That's why this moment matters beyond the headlines. It wasn't anger. It wasn't chaos. It was a rare moment where a member of Congress told the nation in real time that an institution designed for impartial justice was avoiding its own responsibility. That if you care about fairness, if you believe no one should be above the law, if you think answers matter more than political loyalty, this is exactly the kind of exchange you need to watch closely, because accountability doesn't disappear all at once. It erodes in moments like this, moments where silence protects power and questions become threats instead of opportunities for clarity. And the only way to push back is to stay informed, stay vocal, and demand the transparency every democracy needs to survive. If you want more breakdowns of these critical moments, where power meets pressure and the truth struggles to surface, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your awareness is what keeps the spotlight where it belongs.